Twisted Tales of the Ritalin Club, the debut graphic novel from Yungblud, has been one of Z2's fastest selling books. I was able to catch up with Yungblud to talk all about it. We chatted. He was in an undisclosed location. So, what was your first encounter with comic books as a medium, and what do you think about the intersection of comics and music?
It kind of shaped the character that I wanted to portray as an artist, really. You know what I mean? As I say, I was like a massive fan of DC because they were kind of very gritty for me. And I think the Joker was a big, big, big part of who I am. You know what I mean? Look at my haircut and shit. You know what I mean? Like, I think growing up in the north of England, I was someone who wanted to wear makeup and wear a dress and like kind of dye my hair, and it was not seen as normal. It was seen as quite bizarre when I was a young kid. And I remember I would look forward to Halloween because I would get to put on my Joker makeup because I loved the feeling of wearing makeup. And I think in terms of my sexuality, I was quite confused about, I don't know what I was, and if I had to label anything at all, because sexuality wasn't really talked about where I was from, but kind of, I really confided in that character. I know he's a complete raging psychopath.
There is that.
There is that thing to touch upon, but I really confided in him because he spoke for the little guys. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And that idea that you can build a larger than life character from anonymity.
Absolutely.
We don't know much about where he came from.
And I think that's why I enjoyed the new film so much and what Joaquin did, because it kind of made me feel the sympathy that I felt for him my whole life. And I was like, finally, like, why did everyone always side with the Waynes? They were just talking. They were like the capitalist elite. You know what I mean? And everyone else underneath didn't matter. And that's what I thought was so beautiful about the movies. You know what I mean? The movie, you know?
Yeah. And that ties back into the Manchester thing as well, because when I think about Manchester, it's, very working class and very blue collar values and very like
completely
anti that whole power structure.
Completely. And I think that was it. But it was kind of a power structure in its own because of its working class in terms of sexuality and makeup and expression. That was a side that was almost, they were the Waynes to that. You know what I'm saying? I was facing a double battle here, and it kind of made me feel really, really scared. And as I say, I kind of wanted to start writing comics because I wanted to give my fan base a genuine physical world that they could fall into like I did. Like when the songs, when you've listened to the song 20 times in a day, when you've been to the gigs, when you sing and you sat at home on your own and everything goes quiet and silent, you can fall into a physical world that you can have your own interpretation of, that can mean something different to you than it does to somebody else. And I remember I was literally in Germany one night, and I was like wired. I was kind of upset. I felt very anxious. I had a knot in my stomach, and I was like, I couldn't quite figure out why. And I was like, I'm going to write a comic book. And I spoke to my friend Ryan O'Sullivan, who I collaborated with on the things. So we just get each other. And I kind of rang him really late at night, and he was like, yo. I was like, we should do this, and this. I've had an idea to make this comic about the Ritalin Club, which is kind of like my fan base, and the way that society tries to place these metaphorical masks on us to normalize us because people are afraid of things they don't understand. And Ryan was like, I love it. And then that whole thing happened, and it kind of went mental. Like, I just kind of put it out. I was like, cool, man, we'll see what happens. And then it just went absolutely mad.
I love that idea of the Ritalin Club too, because it reminds me of, again, the lineage of larger than life rock characters and their respective fan bases, whether it's the Kiss Army or the MC Army, absolutely, or the Misfits Fiend Club or the Despair Faction. Like, I think it really fits right in there.
Absolutely. And I think the thing about it is like, my fan base is called the Black Arts Club, and I didn't want to call it like the Black Arts Club. I wanted to give them another layer. And the Ritalin Club is like, I have ADHD, and they tried to prescribe me as a kid, as a nipper. But I I just think it was kind of a realization that my handicap, if you like, wasn't a handicap at all. It because of that illness, because of that defect that everyone called it, it allowed me to find people that loved me for genuinely who I am, and vice versa. So the Ritalin Club was a positive thing. That's why when these kids managed to break away from the masks and break away from the prescription drugs the teachers give them to keep them normalized and censored, they find solidarity and community and a sense of life. And I was like, I want it to be like Centurions meets Skins meets Deadpool. And then it happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And you just spoke eloquently about the appeal of comic books and comic book culture in the first place. It's very much for the outsider, and it's very much, these characters that cast themselves as these icons because they're perceived as other, because they have this outsiderness, this underdog, these stories. And I think, the tie with your music in particular and comic books is that there's something about your songs and your kind of storytelling ability that feels visual in nature, even though it's
always
listening to music.
I was obsessed with Bowie. You know what I mean? I was so obsessed with Bowie because he created these characters. And trust me, when this next album comes out, it's a full like concept, character driven. I always love theater. I always love comic books. I always love visuals. Visuals. It's kind of weird. I think visuals died a little bit from rock and roll music. I think that's why rock and roll music became a little bit obsolete, and hip hop completely took over because the visuals were just so incredible. You know what I mean? The visuals were just like mind blowing to me, and it gave you when you have a great visual, it builds a world. You know what I'm saying? You're instantly inside a world, and I think with this next one, I'm a big fan of kind of anime and manga and kind of that, and like I was watching like Spirited Away and Ponyo and like looking at a lot of Miyazaki's work, and I was like, how can I blend this world with comic world? And people might be watching this going, this is sacrilegious, we're going to burn you at the stake. And I'm like, come on baby, burn me alive. And I was like, in this comic book, we are going to go into manga and from a comic book world into a manga world. And this next comic book is about the Ritalin Club. And if no one knows what that is, it's a group of young people who started in high school. And in that high school, they were censored by taking the teachers were given prescription drugs and put masks on them to make sure they couldn't fulfill their full potential and be who they were. But the Ritalin Club rebelled against that, and every single person has a superpower. And this next story is about college. So they've finished high school, now they go to college. And in college, they start to experiment with drugs. And some smart, wise arse bring some acid to the party. And in that party, they take acid and then they go inside the manga world. So to get to the manga world, you take acid and it's another world, and they find themselves battling with versions of themselves inside the manga world. I'm not going to give too much of the story away, but I wanted to blend the worlds. And they get stuck inside the manga world. How will they get back?
And that idea of adolescence and where that ties in with these characters too, I think is pretty exciting. It reminds me of, some of the classic X-Men stories and
always
these ideas of, these misfits that are dealing with this allegorical, big, fanciful world, but are also dealing with very relatable, everyday, real life stuff.
Tying it, and that's it, man. My fans wanted to create superpowers, like to be. Like as I say, there's a brilliant character called Harmony, and she's a shapeshifter, and she can't quite figure out if she wants to be male or female yet. So she decides to kind of take on an approach where that doesn't matter, and she doesn't want to announce her pronouns. You know what I mean? She doesn't want to be any gender. She wants to be who she is, and people see that as a negative. I see that as a superpower. I see that as a confidence to kind of go, this is who I am. You know what I'm saying? And there's a character called Zombie Joshua who was who was killed by one of the teachers, but he's a zombie and he managed to come back to life. You know what I'm saying? And these characters kind of fall in love with each other and kind of go through these experiences in terms of sex, in terms of drugs, in terms of sexuality, in terms of liberation, and it's all heightening this game that we're all playing called life that no one understands, that no one could simply prophesize, and it's a coming of age story. You know what I mean? And it ties with my album. The music goes hand in hand with the story because it's called A Weird Time at Quarry Bank, and Quarry Bank is the school where John Lennon, the grammar school where John Lennon went. So I always wanted to tie it back to kind of my roots and what I love.
Yeah.
But the album's called Weird. So as I say, it all ties in with the music.